Good morning to you, Angela.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you so much for joining us. Now, we've seen all these energy companies with sky-high bills for us, and a lot of criticism of them, and we've seen an awful lot having to be bailed out. Indeed, Bulb was one of those companies that did get bailed out. Water is very different from energy, isn't it? Because I can say, I don't want to be with EDF. I think I'll be with another company, whoever it is. I live in the Thames Water area, as do a quarter of the people in this country, 15 million households. So I don't get a choice. Thames Water is the company that provides my water. I don't have a choice about the bills. I don't have a choice about anything other than not drinking water and taking a short shower instead of a deep bath. That's I'm watering my garden. That's pretty much all I can do. Should taxpayers be asked to bail out a private company that has made billions?
Not in that way, no. I'm happy to bail out people who use Thames Water, like you. I live in the area, and here around where I am, they do the sewage, they don't do the water in. So you are right in what you say, it's quite complicated. And I think Emma, your commentator beforehand, made the right point about why was it privatised in the first instance, and that is to stop investment in water competing with investment in health and investment in schools and all the rest of it. So what can they do here? And to my mind, there is a real case whereby you can put Thames Water into some sort of special administration vehicle, so leaving the debts of its owners behind, because its owners have raised the money and loaded it up with debt. And then you've got a functioning company. Now, it would need to have then a second framework put round it where it is in some form of maybe not a public ownership, but certainly a very controlled ownership, with those in charge of it who understand the water industry and what needs to be done. Where we are at the moment is a result of successive owners loading up the company with debt in a time of a low interest environment. And the regulator, you cannot let the regulator off the hook, because unlike most of our regulators, the water regulator regulates what's called its OPEX, that's how much it can spend on operating, and its CAPEX as well, i.e. how much it can spend
or should spend on capital. So I certainly would never let the regulator off. If you're going to have any company, any national utility like this privatised, that will only work. It's got to be dependent on very strong regulation. We've seen pretty poor regulation by Ofgem of energy companies, but Ofwat, it seems to be extraordinary. Do you see anything strange in the fact we lost a chief executive on Tuesday of Thames Water, been there for 3 years? The new interim chief executive, presumably appointed by the board at Thames Water, not the government's influence, is Catherine Ross. She's a former chief executive of Ofwat. I mean,
that's interesting, isn't it?
Do you not think?
That's interesting. I don't know what her commercial experience is, and I don't want to badmouth anybody, but you do need somebody who's experienced, who understands, the engineering, the industry.
No, but not just that. If you're the person who's regulating and at some point you're going to get a lovely, jubbly, highly paid job, well, it's not in anyone, I'm not accusing her of anything, it's not in anyone's interest in that job to come down hard on any company, is it?
Absolutely. What one needs is clearly they've got to put an interim in place. So whoever they've got, right, let's just let them get on with the job of running the company. But first of all, as I said, the regulation is not right. So that needs to be looked at. But if we deal with Thames, if Thames is dealt with in a way in which those who've loaded it up with debt get left with the debt, and they've got to sort that out, the company then can operate it also in a proper way. And as I say, I can't design the process, but there's many people out there who understand how to do these.
And so the taxpayer doesn't get lumped with it. But this is the thing. Can I just clarify this? So what you're saying is, in terms, they've got 14 billion in debt in Thames Water. We know 4 other water companies. Yorkshire Water is one of them, are also facing these problems. They've got 5 million customers. But you're in this situation. So we've got this asset. It's making money. You've got guaranteed customers because they can't not use your thing. And we're basically going to use that as leverage to get loans when interest rates were 0.5%, and now interest rates have gone up, and they're going, oh, that's what's happened. They're left with all this debt, and now the companies, the shareholders, a Canadian pension fund, Abu Dhabi, and state-owned China investment company are saying, we haven't got the money now. I mean, They do have the money. It's their debt. It's their poor decision making. It's their company. They're the shareholders who had a say over what the board was doing. They own this. This is their problem, isn't it?
Yeah, that's why I want to leave them with the debt, actually, Julia, and put the running of the company into different hands, because it's still got a guaranteed income, for heaven's sake. It's you and me, everybody else who pays the bill. So those who assumed that low interest rates were there forever and you could carry on loading up these companies with debt because they got guaranteed incomes, and that guaranteed income was set out by the regulator. You know, there's a warning shot that needs to be sent. This is the biggest. I appreciate it's not simple. It's easy for me to say, complicated to do, but there is a process that can do it, number one. Number two, it also sends a very strong message to the debt holders of the other water companies that they have got to man up to this issue as well. And number three, to the regulators, that if you regulate both, you know, so many aspects of the running of the business, it isn't just a formula. You've actually got to think about it more widely. We're not coming to the end, unfortunately, of the consequences of whatever it was, a decade and a half, nearly 2 decades of low interest rates and suddenly high inflation. We're not coming.
This is affecting an awful lot of people, isn't it? But this is the thing. Is the answer that this natural monopoly? It should be and a vital public good. I mean, people don't have an option; they need water. Should that be nationalised? Was it wrong for it to be privatised in the first place? Because it's quite clear. I mean, it's quite clear that the money ain't being invested at the right levels. Because if you're able to pay tens and tens of billions in dividends to shareholders, clearly it's not all going back into sewage pipes and mending leaks and the like. And clearly they're not good at managers. We've had this is what was exposed in 2008. This idea, all these people working in the city, they're all so clever and brilliant. If we were all as clever as them, we'd all be earning 7-figure salaries. They're not. I mean, they're just playing the roulette wheel. They just do it better than us. Right.
So let's start where you started. Should water have been privatised? Well, of course, I'm old enough to remember what it was like before it was privatised. And the reality...
Did you still have water? I had water then.
And it didn't get the expenditure in it, and it didn't do the clean-up, and it had a load of these problems are from those days. And when it set off, it was fine. I do think that where something started to go wrong was when the financial engineering came in and, as you rightly say, started to pick up these companies and says, oh, yes, look, they've got this guaranteed income because we've all got to pay water, we've all got to have it. And then you had these complex constructions in, and I'm going to finger one company here, Julia. It is a company called Macquarie, and Macquarie is not a British company either. No doubt somebody will ring me up today and threaten me for saying it. But the reality is that Macquarie got this idea very strongly, and I think you'll find it has been involved with Thames Water, where you did take out a lot of dividends from the company, load them up with debt at low interest rates, say it's all right. The regulator Ofwat said that's okay too, and all ran along. And it was known by some, but in a low interest environment and a low inflation environment, nothing sort of seemed to be too wrong. And as they always say, when the tide goes out, you find out who's wearing the trunks and who hasn't got them on. And unfortunately, this is one of the areas where the trunks are not on. And that is why I keep saying, leave the debt with those who caused the financial problem.
Hear to that. Angela Knight, I'm sure people are cheering you on that, former Treasury Minister and former CEO of Energy UK, having dealt with a lot of these things with energy companies. Love to talk to you.